With all the new vaccine information and misinformation coming out daily, how can we figure out what to believe and what to not?
My number one recommendation is to go to your doctor to actually find out the right sources of information. Almost all family doctors in Alberta are up to date with the information and can use their background knowledge and experience with disease, with how the body works, to help provide some guidance and clarity around this matter. We're always here for you. I've actually talked about the vaccine and the virus with almost all my patients. We also know that most people coming into ICU who are not vaccinated, it is almost always because they believed false information. This is a handy summary of what you should be looking for, because really we need to be careful. We need to guard ourselves against people and sources that tell mistruths and claim to be scientific when they're really not. Hopefully this list can help you. I found that number 3 is quite common in the COVID era, especially with the vaccines. People cherry pick data and cherry pick information, and oftentimes they only pick maybe like 1% of the information that is out there that supports their views, and they discount the vast majority of information. People also cherry pick the expert that they talk to. So instead of listening to the 99% of doctors that all support vaccination, they listen to the 1% of doctors that frankly are spreading misinformation.
Do you personally know doctors and nurses who are not on board yet regarding vaccination? And if so, what are their reasons?
I don't personally know doctors or nurses who are not on board, but I am aware of a letter that was published in the Western Standard that was signed by 70 doctors. If you look at that letter and you apply it to the list of pseudoscience that I have given you here, they rely on cherry-picked information. All of the information that they're citing in that letter is cherry-picked. And they also use unreliable information because they use VAERS data, that data from the USA. It's basically this big bank of self-reported adverse reactions to the vaccination. There's a huge disclaimer on that website to not use this database as a database of side effects, because just having a correlation doesn't imply a causative effect. It could just be coincidence that somebody developed symptoms of something after they got vaccinated. But that letter from the 70 doctors highlights those data and other cherry-picked data. For the rest of the 10,000 doctors in the province who have looked at that letter and saw 70 of our colleagues writing this, it is just absolutely, how do I put this? It is not professional. It is not good medical care. And I just want to remind people that, yes, there are going to be people who don't have patients' best interests in mind. There's a very few number of doctors that actually make pseudoscience claims. We have over 11,000 doctors in this province. We have 70 doctors who wrote that letter. You can decide whether you want to trust that 70 or whether you want to trust the over 11,000. And just because the 70 are making more noise than the 11,000 doesn't mean that the folks who are making more noise is more credible or trustworthy. That is quite unfortunate, but as long as you know this, you should be able to help yourself here and make sure that the information you're looking at is accurate. Now, number 9, logical fallacies, arguments with errors in reasoning. I just want to give you a quick example of that. So you may have heard folks saying, oh, but 50% of infections are amongst the vaccinated, so of course vaccination doesn't work. So that's called a base rate bias, because the base rate of people who are vaccinated are much higher than the base of people who are unvaccinated. And there's a logical fallacies because if you have 100 people, 83% of whom are fully vaccinated, you can have 50% of infections be amongst those who are vaccinated and 50% of infections be amongst those who are unvaccinated. But you can see that once this is all made very clear here, that most people who are vaccinated do not have infections. This is how some people spread misinformation and fear out there, is that they use these logical fallacies to make the situation look worse than it is. So be careful. Learn to guard yourself against misinformation and you'll come out great.
This is a related comment that I'm wondering if you have additional thoughts on. It says, a letter was recently penned by 3,544 AHS healthcare workers to AHS on the mandatory full vaccinations for all AHS staff. There are so many people that say, listen to science or the experts, get the shot. When 3,544 Alberta healthcare workers made up of doctors, nurses, paramedics, pharmacists, etc., are against mandatory vaccines, that also sends another signal. There are experts on each side of the argument, so it gets confusing. So any thoughts around that one?
I can totally see how that would be confusing. And I can totally see how you would think that there's experts on both sides of the argument. I have read that letter, and that's the letter that I was talking about when I said there were 70 doctors who wrote that letter. I wasn't sure of the exact numbers of healthcare workers, so thank you for telling me that. Out of that 3,500 people who signed the letter, 70 were doctors. If you read the letter, they cherry-picked data. They falsely associated correlation with causation when people who do research, people who are scientists say that that's basically a rule of thumb, is you never associate correlation with causation because it can lead you to false conclusions. That letter is being picked apart by our group of physicians. It's very disappointing for us to see something like this. And it's not a question of there's both sides to this debate. It is not a debate. It is one group of renegade doctors who are spreading false information, and that group of doctors and other healthcare workers are very small compared with the vast majority of other physicians who are trying to do the right thing and to communicate with patients in an honorable and safe manner that tries to deliver the right and reliable information to patients. 70 doctors wrote that letter or co-signed that letter. There's 11,000 other doctors in the province that do not support what they support. So it is not a debate. It is not two sides. It is one group of renegade doctors who are spreading misinformation, and they should not be trusted.